Hi, and welcome to Mom Boss Chronicles. We are your hosts. I am Jen.
I'm Sue.
And we are empowering and inspiring people through meaningful conversations. So make sure to like and subscribe to listen to great content weekly.
Welcome back to Mom Boss Chronicles. We are here today with Rachel Cuomo. She is a registered dietitian and she is the owner of Bodhi Nutrition. And I'm pretty sure around this date last year, you also joined us. So we're so excited to have you back here today.
It's like the 1 year anniversary.
Yes, exactly. Like, welcome back. We should have had some like a champagne or something, right, for the anniversary. But, Rachel and I are friends and we do talk often. And I also work with Rachel a lot as well for health and nutrition, especially as we're growing wiser, as I like to say, just a couple more trips around the sun. Yes. We wanted to have you on today to talk about the dreaded H word, hormones. And also because, we're at the age and our demographic is at the age where we're really starting to talk about perimenopause. And it's so nice to see that so many more people and platforms are bringing awareness to this. And so I guess to kick it off, I reached out to you not long ago just about doing something very simple and checking my hormones, right? And so although everything was kind of pretty good, I was shocked to find out my cortisol level was really low, right?
And not high.
No, I thought it was going to be like skyrocket, but it was interesting, right? So just, I guess, bringing that awareness to me was amazing. So like, what are you seeing too? Do you have a lot of your clients reaching out and, what are your thoughts on, getting tested and what are you seeing?
I think, hormones, us poor females, we've been dealing with hormones since, puberty.
I know.
And, then once we finally get used to our periods, then all of a sudden we're looking at perimenopause. And then, I have clients in their 50s, 60s, still dealing with issues. Sue and I were talking, luckily we're in a time where it's becoming a huge topic.
Yeah.
And I think, it's going to be great for the generation after us because they're going to have so much more information than we have, and especially more than our moms and our grandmas had. We're just so much more aware.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot more hormone issues now also than there were back then. I think a lot of it has to do with environmental, the things that we're all exposed to.
Right.
I think we're starting to really see a lot of hormonal imbalances that weren't there, 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
And so a lot of my clients, they typically come to me because they're not feeling well. They don't necessarily think it's a hormone thing. They just feel, moods are off, energy's off,
Fatigue. Can't sleep or
100%. Can't sleep, or they do sleep, but they wake up exhausted and they don't know why. They don't have like a get up and go in the morning, or they're wired and tired. That's another one. At night they feel like they should be, falling asleep, but they can't. They just can't fall asleep. So that's a big one. Weight gain, we all know that, and the puffiness in the face, just feeling like they're exercising, they're eating right, they're doing all the things, but yet they can't seem to lose this inflammation and this weight. So, a lot of times they come to me with those issues, plus usually there's some gut health stuff involved in that too, because that's my specialty. And then the more that we, start to chip away at things, we see, okay, there's definitely some hormonal issues going on.
And would you say most women will in their lifetime experience hormonal imbalance or issues?
So, I think that at some point most women have, a little issue here or there. I think a lot of our generation, a lot of us were put on the pill. It was thrown at all of us.
I didn't even think about that.
Like it was nothing, right? All my friends are on it. And I was too. Like it was just, I'm on it. What kind are you on?
100%. I think I was put on it at 13, not because of having sex, because I had like IBS. And the doctor was like, it'll fix that.
Is that like the catch-all? Like, we'll just put you on the pill.
You have headaches, here's the pill.
Cramps. Heavy periods, pill.
Meanwhile, it can then cause issues with all of those things.
Because it's a hormone, right?
It's a hormone, and it depletes essential nutrients. It actually can cause leaky gut and issues with digestion, can cause more migraines. So it's ridiculous. But I think our generation, especially being put on the pill or the IUD or the patch, we definitely have been impacted hormonally. We're all experiencing repercussions. I mean, I think that's why there's so many more people who can't become pregnant. There's fertility issues, right? And then, like I was saying before, like the BPAs, and all of the chemicals.
The plastics, right? Which is so scary if you go down that rabbit hole.
So scary.
Because it's in everything. That's a lot of packaging,
it's like
right?
It's literally in everything.
Our water bottles, right?
And our cosmetics,
our
hair
the
products,
cosmetics. That's
clothes.
Right.
What we're cleaning with. It's not just the BPs. It's all of the chemicals. There's like forever chemicals and toxins, right?
And I feel like I was obsessed with Febreze. That couldn't have been good, right? Like,
Yes.
The fake
smell,
scent stuff.
yes.
Yep.
Yes, I think about what I used to use, right? I used to have like the little air fresheners hanging in
Yeah,
my car,
right.
and all of those are like endocrine disruptors. They can all impact our hormones, and everybody has different thresholds of toxins and what their bodies can tolerate, but usually at a certain point, we're going to break,
Yeah.
and what's in our water is a whole nother
Yeah.
story,
Right.
right? I mean, there's hormones in our water.
Oh, wow.
We see that.
In public water.
In public drinking water.
Wow.
Even water that, you get through your faucet that's been filtered, to taste better.
Yeah.
It's not taking out all of those hormones, and all of the chemicals. So we're bombarded.
And then you drink plastic, and then, if you're going to drink plastic water, that's
Right.
you have to still deal with
Yeah.
that. So it's like nothing's safe.
Yeah. So, a lot of people who come to see me with, these symptoms and these potential hormone issues, we don't necessarily have to run like a Dutch test, like I did with Sue right off the bat.
What is the Dutch test?
Comprehensive, yeah.
Yeah, it's a urine and saliva test
Okay.
for hormones, and there's different levels.
Okay.
So it's an expensive test. I think the lowest end is like a $200 test, and then can go all the way up to $600.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But it's much more comprehensive than what you would get from a serum blood test in
Okay.
your doctor's office.
Oh, wow.
We also look at cortisol, which Sue was mentioning
Yeah.
before. We look at, the cortisol awakening response, which is very helpful. It's a daily pattern of what's happening with your cortisol.
Okay.
When you go to the doctor, if you said to the doctor, I feel stressed out all the time or exhausted and I want to look at my cortisol, they would just do a one-time draw to check for cortisol. And cortisol is one of those hormones that actually changes throughout the day. It should change throughout the day. So that one-time draw really doesn't tell us anything.
And what time did you do it?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And did you come in extremely stressed out in that one moment?
Yeah, like blood pressure in a way, right?
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of people say, oh, well, my doctor checked this, and it was normal. And so the Dutch will give us a lot better, clearer view as far as what's going on.
And does it matter too, like the time of month and like certain?
It can.
Yeah.
There are definitely certain weeks out of the month that we all notice. Typically, we feel more stressed. We're less stress resilient. Like that luteal phase that leading up to the period. That week before the period, typically, we feel more fatigued. Our body can't handle as much. We're a little bit more brain foggy. Sue asked me when I want to come on this podcast. I'm like, well, let me check my cycle.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I do a lot to support my hormones, but even if you do everything, you're still going to get those fluctuations because your estrogen and your progesterone are having major ups and downs. That's normal. So knowing that and, knowing how you feel, you can definitely schedule accordingly.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And I love that you plan around your schedule based on that too.
Yeah,
That's
if I
so smart.
can,
Yeah.
I hate when I'm off a little and then I have a day with so many clients and it just so happens to land on like that late luteal day, and I can feel it.
And I feel like most women would too if they were just a little bit more sensitive to what's going on in their body.
Yes.
But we are just like on go mode, so we don't ever stop and think, how am I feeling right now?
No, well, that I track. I track my hello. What is it called? Oh, I'm supposed to get mine tomorrow. I track my cycle, and because I do want to know, like, why am I reacting? It just gives self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
And like the cool thing with the Dutch test too, why it is so comprehensive, like it is a month-long process.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's how it's really tracking you fully because it's going through your entire cycle.
That is amazing.
Yeah, because you were saying like
Yes.
our hormones change throughout our cycle.
So
right?
it gives you a
Yes.
good picture, I guess, of what she really is experiencing throughout this month.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It shows you graphs, so you
amazing.
can actually compare what's going on with your hormones
That's awesome.
to like what a normal, cycle would look like.
Yeah.
Same with cortisol, you see a normal cortisol awakening response. It's supposed to go up 30 minutes after waking and then slowly taper throughout the day.
Okay.
So then you can see that chart, and then what your cortisol is doing. Is yours following that pattern, or is it like Sue's dead on the floor throughout the morning?
Does that cause her to then be tired?
I mean, it's interesting because I have been thinking to myself, exhausted. Like I'm, me, I'm energetic. I'm always like on the go. And I do feel like I generally have high energy, but I would say in the past several months, like probably like almost this year, I've noticed a depletion in my energy where sometimes by the end of the day, like remember when you were first pregnant and you're like, oh my God, this is like a tired I've never felt before. Like I've been feeling that around like 4, like 3, 4 o'clock that I've never experienced.
Like want to crawl into
it was
a
like
bed.
very enlightening to hear that, Like, okay, we gotta get back up.
Yeah. And this is where, you go on Instagram or TikTok, and cortisol is such a buzzword right now. I mean, it's everywhere. And I think most people will lead you to think I have high cortisol, right? And the symptoms can be very similar, high cortisol or low cortisol. So you really can't self-diagnose.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, a test really is helpful. There's a lot of foundational things that you would do for both ends that are the same, So blood sugar balance is crucial for both. Circadian rhythm support. So, same bedtime, same wake time, really focusing on gut health and reducing inflammation. These are all important. Working on nervous system, that's the biggest one, So what's been stressing you out from a mental perspective?
Those damn kids, huh?
Right? Working on breath work and meditation and all the things that it's hard to do. But there are definitely other things that you can do that are more targeted. You would need to know, okay, is my cortisol really low or is it really high? And so that's where that test can be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So interesting. And I wish doctors would even, I feel like nobody even thinks about this.
No.
This isn't part of our regular screenings and annual visits.
No, it's
most
not.
of them kind of, I hate to say this, my dad's a physician and I respect him so much, and we need doctors,
Yeah.
But so many of them, unfortunately, when women ask for these types of tests, they kind of roll their eyes at it.
I guess because they weren't trained with it. They're like, well, I'm not familiar with it. I'm not trained with that. So I can't advocate for that.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. I think, if they sat down and they really dug into the literature and the science behind it, I do think more of them would start to offer it.
Yeah.
But they're busy and they don't have the time, to do that typically. So it's unfortunately something that you have to look for, usually through a functional provider.
Thank God for people like you.
Oh, thank
No,
you.
truly. And because we talked about it, we came up with a plan.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a plan of action
I love
now,
that.
So it's we're going a holistic route. I've seen some other stuff with steroid. No, we're going a holistic route. I've vitamins, nutrients. Being more
Tailored to you.
cognizant, about getting a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
That I go to the gym, so that's where my I get it out. But it's helpful to know all of these things, and then it was helpful to see that other my estrogen is in good shape, right? So that is okay, we can put that aside.
Sex
we're
hormones
good.
were all good,
right?
Yeah.
So it's good to put that stuff aside. But I think it's just beneficial for us ladies, to do that and have that self-awareness, because you may be surprised by what you see.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of just self-confirming. If you feel like crap all the time and, you're like, what's wrong with me? I think sometimes it's oh my God, wow, I'm not, this isn't in my head. I'm not just
My
lazy.
body really is feeling it.
Yeah. I mean, I went through a period of my life where I also had no cortisol and all my sex hormones were plummeting, and I felt it. It was this bone dry exhaustion. And I remember when I got my results back, I cried. I was like, oh my God, this is why, and it's aggravating because you see this path ahead that you have to work on, but it's also very nice to finally have an answer, So I like being able to give that to my clients.
Yeah.
And a lot of them feel that way. They're like, oh, it all makes sense now.
Yes. It's I'm not going crazy. I really was feeling off, and now I understand why.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think personally everybody should take this test,
And I would say throughout your life, obviously your hormones change, right? From your 20s to your 30s to your 40s.
Yeah.
To,
I mean, they can change every year, depending on what you've been doing, how you've been taking care of yourself. They can shift. But certainly, 33 is when perimenopause can start.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily start for everybody at that time, I mean, we're definitely more fertile, we know, in our teens and early 20s, and then that starts to go down. But of course, once we enter into perimenopause, that's when we have this roller coaster of hormones, and it's a very frustrating time, because even as a practitioner, there's only so much we can do. You're going to take a hormone test. One day your estrogen may be high, and the next day it actually may be low.
Wow.
And that's perimenopause.
Oh, wow.
So while progesterone is kind of gradually going down, estrogen's kind of having this fun little
party on its own.
Yeah. So it can be hard, and that's unfortunately why through perimenopause sometimes we feel like, oh, I'm hormonal, I'm having this, right? Or, one day we may have hot flashes and feel like really warm, and then all of a sudden we feel fine for a week or two,
Like our body's playing tricks on us.
Yeah. So, whereas menopause, it's typically everything's crashed, you have a bunch of hot flashes for an extended period of time, and then you're kind of done.
Yeah.
So I almost think, now listen, I haven't gone through menopause, and I'm sure anybody listening who is would probably kick me. But from what I from what I see on paper, I would almost think menopause would be less frustrating than peri, because at least there is more, of a concrete. This is what's happening.
Yeah, like a black and white.
Yeah.
Kind of like when we got our periods when we were younger. I remember before getting my period being so emotional and hating my mom and everything.
Yep.
Yes.
And then once you got it, you're like, oh,
yeah.
okay.
Well, it's
and
like
this
also
still sucks,
everybody.
but-
Like, fucking hate everybody. Fuck all you guys.
But it's like the build up to it.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think talking about like the perimenopause, like the biggest symptom I noticed for myself at the beginning of this year that kind of like started my brain thinking more like I felt like such crazy rage. And I'm like a pretty laid back person. I do like try to meditate and do more
Mindful.
calming things, but like just like a feeling of anger that I was like, this is not
that you couldn't shake,
normal.
right?
Yeah, like couldn't shake it, couldn't talk myself out of it, and that was not like me. I'm like, this is bizarre. This is really, really weird.
Yeah.
And that kind of was like a kickstart
And
to
that's
start
hormones,
like doing
right?
some research at the beginning of like 2024.
Yeah.
Can you, I guess, explain like what does estrogen hormone and what is progesterone? Like,
Yep.
do they do different things? And like, is that the hormones we have?
Yeah. So they both do different things.
Okay.
Yeah. Progesterone's kind of like the feel-good hormone. It kind of helps us a little bit more mentally. When progesterone is low, which is a very common thing that I see. I mean, I think it's probably the most common pattern is actually to see low progesterone and higher estrogen in women like our age group. When progesterone is low, typically we start to feel a lot moodier, a lot more tired. We feel like just ragey and angry, and it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Estrogen is more of a anti-inflammatory hormone. It's actually very helpful, but if it's in excess, which we see a lot now because of all those hormone disruptors, then it can actually lead to heavy bleeds, kind of tender breasts. It can definitely lead to bloating and water retention and weight gain and headaches. So, they're both important. You want them in balance.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Working in harmony.
Yes, working in harmony. Yes.
Yeah.
Progesterone tends to go down and get depleted often when people are stressed and when they are under eating and over exercising.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very much dependent
Wow.
on those. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you think about women in general, right? And I think our age group who grew up in diet culture, we see a lot of that.
Calorie counting and
Yes.
restriction.
Yeah.
Over restriction,
Yep.
over exercise, like HIIT classes, boot camp classes, right? Like all these intense things, and then just being stressed out with life, and that really starts to deplete that happy chemical, progesterone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So no wonder why we're moody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And then with estrogen, we need to be detoxing it if we don't want it to be
Too high.
So our liver and our gut, those are the two ways that we detox
wow.
estrogen. And the Dutch test will actually look at, how you are detoxing estrogen, which is cool. We'll have a better idea of what people need more support in.
That's awesome.
But, as far as liver goes, we know like bitters, lemon juice, that kind of stuff really helps with the liver. Dandelion root tea is a big one.
Oh, wow.
And then having regular bowel movements is key. So a lot of times with people who have high estrogen, they tend to err on the side of constipation. I tend to see that pattern a lot.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So really getting people pooping twice a day,
Wow.
can help. And raw carrots are actually a very good way
I
to
didn't
do
know
that. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I've been making some little shaved carrot salads. Like yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to have carrots and hummus now.
Yeah.
There you go. The other is cruciferous vegetables. So broccoli, Brussels sprouts, that kind of stuff.
So eating, who knew, right? Taking care of your body.
Yes, right?
Yes.
So
Like,
eating good foods
wow.
for you.
Your food is medicine.
Yeah. Coming in here, I was like, I want to offer some really easily digestible options for
Yeah.
people because
Pun intended.
yeah, right. I know, I love using that word because not everybody can afford a Dutch test or has access to a Dutch test
Yeah.
right away. And again, while knowing what's going on can be very helpful, foundational stuff like this, you can do it no matter what's going on. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And it's going to help.
Yeah.
So, So I usually dandelion root tea, milk thistle root tea. Those are things I brew
And
every
that's
month. tea.
That's awesome.
Just go to
I
the
like
regular
tea.
grocery
Yeah.
store, brew it up. You can brew it up in a batch and just stick it in your fridge and just sip on it.
Yeah.
And then 4 cups of cruciferous vegetables a week and raw carrots every day. These are things everybody can do to just support, their
Your body
hormones.
doing its thing.
Exactly.
It's so weird because, right, we live in our body, but I wish it was like a computer where I could be like, hey, what are you feeling today?
Right, exactly. Hey, checking in. Can you print out the report,
Can you
please?
tell me?
What do you need today? Because we're complex, clearly.
Yes.
Yes.
At some point, I bet you they're going to have that. Now they have at least like the Aura rings and stuff.
Yeah.
I bet you in like 50 years, they'll have some sort of thing you pee every morning on.
Right.
It's like gives you your
That would
analysis.
be awesome.
Gives you your report.
It makes me think too, like how females are. We are so much more complex than our male counterparts.
I
And
know,
like,
because they just have testosterone.
what species of
right?
alien are we?
Right.
Like special beings.
Yeah, well,
for
if you're,
sure.
if you're a smart man and you're, dating or married to a woman, you will get to know the different phases of the cycle
yes.
and start tracking her cycle, right?
I've heard of some men who are like, "Oh, I keep a calendar," and then I know, you're prepared.
It's funny because I think Gary probably knows better than me because he'll be like, "Oh, you were extra moody or upset." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Was I?"
Yes. Shut the fuck up. I wasn't talking to you.
You're right. They are in tune where we're in it, so we
Yeah.
can't even realize what we're doing.
No.
We're like such a tizzy.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, every month, that luteal phase hits, and I know I do it to myself. You start to think all the bad things,
Yes.
like I'm not good enough, and what's my purpose,
Yep.
and I look so gross, and you don't even realize it's happening. This has been going on for 20 years for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It still
Yep.
hits you every time.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah.
And, like literally this week, even today, I was on my morning walk with the dog, and I'm like, "Stop. You're fine.
Yeah.
You can. You will.
Yeah.
It's just a phase.
Chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
trucking.
as soon as we get our periods,
Yeah.
usually it's like,
It's like, oh my god, hi.
I got this.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm back at it.
Does I guess another question I have: hormones? Does it also being vain? Does it affect your appearance? Like it can, I would imagine,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it definitely can. I mean,
Like hair breakage or hair loss. Is that like a hormone?
yeah, so, I'm not an expert in this so much, but I've definitely read, your skin obviously changes throughout the cycle because there's certain weeks where you're producing more oil than others, so your skin might look more oily. There's certain weeks where you're more inflamed than others, so you're going to see potentially more acne, surfacing, things like that. Hair, I would imagine, is probably around the same thing,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I think I look prettier in ovulation.
Right?
I
Isn't
look
that
in the
funny?
mirror, like,
Right.
oh,
You're
looking
right. Like
good
skin's
today.
Yeah.
glowing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a reason behind that, right? Like you read about, mates and attracting,
Yes.
mates. I think that's why we look better
That's
during
crazy.
ovulation.
Yeah.
I read somewhere, I don't know if this is true, that we're more symmetrical around ovulation.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Wow.
So it really does
can
happen.
believe it,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
We should take a picture every day of ourselves. And
I
then we get
know,
right.
right? A 30-day.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
wild.
Interesting.
It is pretty cool, yeah. But during perimenopause, the switch from before your period to after your period tends to be more dramatic, especially for people who already were sensitive to that. We tend to see it gets worse.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, like I feel
You
even
feel it
more
stronger.
PMDD,
Yeah.
beforehand.
And that's going to happen in perimenopause.
Yeah, especially if there's imbalances.
I know what you mean. So we're not going crazy. Like our body
Yes.
is working crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all those foundations are even more important to do consistently during perimenopause
Yeah.
years.
So like setting the tone now
Yes.
for preparation for the future.
Because
Essentially.
what is the average age for menopause?
So menopause, I mean, I would say around 50 is probably when it typically happens.
Okay.
But you can be in perimenopause for many
Which is
years.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That is wild.
And, there's something going around saying, a year of not having your period is what they consider being done, with menopause. But I've had clients who've had a year without having their period, and then all of a sudden it emerges again.
Wow.
So nobody really, I
Yeah.
think, knows,
The truth. And
Yeah.
It's probably like also like case by case, like person by person,
yeah.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Since we're so
yeah.
unique.
And during perimenopause, you're not supposed to be as fertile, but plenty of women get pregnant.
Yeah.
So you're still, there's a lot of years there where you're still ovulating, and
Yeah.
so it's definitely not a time to say, "Oh, I'm not fertile."
Yeah.
Right.
Right. But things just start to get a little bit harder typically.
Yeah.
So really focusing on blood sugar balance and nervous system and stress is just so important during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So making sure you're doing the protein every time you eat, 30 grams of
Mm-hmm.
protein at every single meal is so important for hormone balance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then
You should write a book.
Oh.
Like,
she knows a publisher.
Yeah. I love this. Like, that's, yeah.
I mean, these are like easy things that we can do, you know, and I think it's just knowledge. It's just knowing, you know, what you have to do and then having some easy examples that you can go to.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, like, in my mind, I'm like, do you have to take hormone therapy or like hormone? Right. Like,
so some people do, you know, some people who are really low progesterone and have just horrible symptoms, and progesterone really does take a long time to recover.
Okay.
So if you're really feeling horrible, then sometimes doing some progesterone cream, you know, can be useful there. And then, yes, there are women who definitely, as they enter into menopause, feel so much better doing HRT.
Yeah.
You know, there are risks involved. There's a lot of conflicting information out there as far as whether breast cancer risks go up with hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
You know, there's a new doctor, she's written a few books, and she is very big on it does not increase it. The old studies were not done well. But, you know, I'm still a little bit on the fence with that. So I don't typically, I can't prescribe hormones anyway as a dietitian, but that's not typically the route that I recommend, you know, for women. Usually I'm going to recommend try the natural stuff first. And there's herbs and adaptogens, you know, that we can use too in certain, you know, certain cases. Like Vitex is one that works very well for some women and just kind of helping to regulate the hormones.
I love that. I feel like that's natural medicine, which is what we had hundreds of years ago.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes,
like,
let's go back to the roots.
Of being in tune with our body and naturally healing it.
Yes.
And like you even said about the nervous system and, you know, our...
Right.
It's so true. Like if we are able to regulate that and regulate other things in our gut, then I think our
breath
body
work,
would...
and what we're consuming and eating.
Yeah.
Like I think, you know, when we first started chatting the first time about nutrition, I was really shocked to find that I had leaky gut. You know, and I think that you had mentioned a lot of people do, you know, and I think we associate it with feeling a certain way or, you know, like in my head, I was like, well, I never even took antibiotics, you know, because I thought like if you took an antibiotic, you know, so having that knowledge and ever since I found that out and we talked about the plan thereafter, my gut has felt a lot better. You know, I'm regular and I feel like just even something as small as having, you know, a better feeling belly and stomach and you're feeling better physically is going to help. It's all connected, right? And like having a healthy gut and a healthy brain, you know.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
So there's something called the HPA axis, and it's basically your hypothalamus and your pituitary gland in your brain and how that affects your adrenal glands, right? But it also all affects your gut, your immune system, your lymphatic system, all of that is tied together, you know? So if your brain is not in a good place, you know,
affects your whole...
then there's this downstream effect and it really impacts everything, you know? So that's that brain-gut connection we talk about, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of things, unfortunately, kind of go back when you're really digging for like the root behind hormone issues, gut issues, and you're digging. A lot of times it goes back to nervous system and what's been happening, you know,
trauma in your life.
Trauma-wise, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we all think of trauma like something really bad. But I think, you know, we all know there's micro traumas that, you know, it's just really the way you respond, the way your nervous system responds to something and how you're processing it and holding on to it, right? So I am not a therapist, I'm not a mental health person, but I've been forced to learn a lot about this because the field that I'm in and seeing how much it does impact these things.
100%.
It all correlates.
Yes, it all correlates, you know, and if you have a leaky gut, then that's definitely going to increase inflammation in the body. It's going to deplete you of certain nutrients that you need, and then that can lead to hormonal imbalances as well. So it's all connected. That's why I think, you know, I went into this space, you know, more for metabolism and gut, and then I had to start doing more with hormones. I had to start doing more with nervous system because otherwise you're missing all the pieces.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like a puzzle.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all connected. We're a complex, beautiful puzzle, us ladies.
But we're all in it together.
Yeah,
we
for
got
sure.
each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate so much you coming on and sharing this information because I really think, you know, our listeners will benefit from at least like, I know it's being talked about more, but hearing it come from you, it'll get people started thinking a little bit more. And you know, we got to stick together in this. And I think the more we start talking about it, like the better off everyone will be. Because I mean, if you think about back in the day, I remember like hearing people like my mom would lock herself in her room and like not, you know, like
Well,
you know, that's the thing.
Yeah.
We don't want to be those.
Yes,
Absolutely.
But they were our, you know, older generations were dealing with issues and like couldn't talk about it, you know, and
or
it
feel
was
like normal
yeah,
about
and
it.
if you're feeling ragey, well, she's crazy, you know, like so.
The older generations, you know, a lot of them are still so much in the dark. You
Yeah.
know? I had a lady not that long ago, you know, she was complaining that her vagina hurt when she was peeing a lot and wiping. And I talked to her about, you know, what happens to her vaginal tissue, you know, after menopause and how it starts to kind of get frailer and, you know, things that we can do. And she didn't know about any of it. Her gyno hadn't talked to her
That's
about
crazy.
it, you know, which is just so sad
I know.
to have to suffer through something that can, you know,
Be treated.
Yeah. So I think, you know, we're kind of like the start of that.
Yeah.
You
Thanks
know?
to social media, we're
Advocates.
able to, you know, get it across the message.
Exactly. You know, my daughter, when she hits puberty, I'm like excited to be able to teach her about like, you know, the different seasons of your menstrual cycle and, you know, what to do to support them. And
I did not even like, you know, we had health class obviously, but I think we're all like deer in headlights. My mother never talked to me about the different cycles, but and I don't think I really understood until probably like my 30s.
Same.
Where like you start being like, okay, like self-aware, right? And understanding, and then you actually read about it. And I'm like, why didn't my mom talk to me about this as a teenager when you're really like in the throes of craziness, you know?
I don't think they knew about it.
No, but like just that thought that you'll, you know, educate your child, your daughter on like, okay, this is why you're feeling like this week, and this is, and then so then she knows from a very early age.
Yes.
Right.
Like,
And
it's okay.
It's okay. And I think it helps, you know, when you are moody, it helps to know, okay, I may not be thinking 100% the way that I would normally be thinking. Let me take a few steps back. Right?
Let me not make big decisions today.
Right, exactly.
Let me not pick a fight right now.
If only I knew all these things, right? So it's pretty cool. I think that, you know, the Dutch test, again, not everybody can
Never heard of it,
take
but that's
it,
awesome,
but I think that if you can afford to take it, it can definitely shed some light, you know, and help you understand what's going on a little bit clearer and
That's
give you a
awesome.
bit more of a targeted path. Yeah.
I learned so much.
Yeah, right?
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for
You should
coming
definitely
on
write
today.
that book.
Yes. We'll connect you with her publisher.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Where can people find you?
They can find me online, Bodhi Nutrition. I'll give you the handle.
Yeah, I got it. We'll put it in there
Yeah.
for sure.
Instagram too?
Yeah, Instagram, and a website. And,
How do you spell Bodhi?
Bodhi is Bodhi.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys next week.